The following program is designed to promote ground crew safety when working under and around helicopters during external load operations. This is not a safety training program and is only intended to be used with the participation of a ground crew safety officer, trainer, or other qualified personnel. All training and refresher courses must be done in accordance with federal and provincial regulations and the Canada Labour Code.
Helicopters are versatile machines. Nowhere is this more evident than in long-lining and external load operations. While most people are aware of the dangers of helicopter rotors, long-lining and external load operations have their own set of hazards, especially for ground crew. The purpose of this video is to sensitize ground crews to the hazards of working around and under helicopters. We talked with those involved in the industry. Here's what they had to say.
When the helicopter comes with the barrel, and when it touches the ground, it releases the tension on the barrel and on the straps, and we just grab the strap this way and we make it loop like that. I grab them with my hands and I signal the pilot that he can go when everybody is clear. I probably step back a bit and my foot left the ground this way. And in stepping back, with the downdraft of the chopper, the straps on the ground just did that, and it caught me like that. And when I took off, I went straight in between the two ramps. The guy on the side, they were fishermen from Newfoundland, and they tried to catch me when I was going up, but they missed me. And I was happy they missed, because we will be three guys on one rope and one foot. That was not a good solution. I say, well, what can I do now? And then I thought, my radio, where is it? Where is it? And then I did that, and I saw that it was doing that. So I grab it this way, and then I contact the pilot, and I took my time because I don't want him to drop me. So I say, hello, Bob. He say, yes, Misha. Can you put me down on the ground, please? So he looked down and he couldn't see me. So he slowed down and he saw me passing by underneath. Well, I was about, say, 200 or 250 feet in the air. After that, the helicopter went down slowly and he dropped me on the ground. And I was lucky I wasn't hurt at all. The pilot maybe took off a bit fast. And it's probably because it was a repetitive action. He was just watching for me to signal him that he can go, and then after that he was looking for the hook to be above my head, and then he fly. But he never thought he had a 15-foot straps underneath. I stepped back just maybe to be sure I was clear, and that was the mistake. but I never thought the straps will fly away like that. There is a situation that you can avoid. I think the key is stay calm and try to do the right things at the right time. That's for sure, sometimes it doesn't work. I did almost everything right, but I get caught. So after that, you have to stay calm and do the right thing next. Because if you panic, you're done.
We're a 3-person remote access heli attack firefighting crew. So we work on a lot of the smaller fires, and when there's lightning busts and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there's a lot of different things that we look at when we get to a site. Safety, of course, is our first priority. The first thing we do to prepare a site is when we get on the ground, we're obviously looking to make sure that we're downslope of the fire, and there's a couple of escape routes set out, not one but two, so that if something happens, we have to do a medevac for whatever reason, that we have those escape routes set up. It's important to clear a site. We're looking for holes in the canopy, just to make sure that there's enough room so that the helicopter pilot can see a ground crews, that communication stays open. When you come into a place, what happens is any loose branches or debris that's floating around on the ground, whether that's anything from flagging tape to loose branches, it has potential of getting sucked up into the helicopter, into the rotors, and causing considerable damage to the helicopter, not only the safety to the ground crews and the pilots. Flagging tape, lunch boxes, water boxes, all that kind of stuff has to be properly stowed and dealt with. Also, when we're on the ground, we're looking for hazards to ourselves, so we're looking for any danger trees. So looking for, widowmakers, large branches or limbs hung up in trees, any loose roots on the ground, snags. So we want to make sure that all that stuff is cleaned up, because safety, of course, is our first priority. So yeah, the first thing we do before we get into a helicopter is, of course, we sit down with a pilot and we go over hand signals. Hand signals vary from pilot to pilot, helicopter company from helicopter company. So just so everybody's on the same page, so that there's no mishaps with long lining and nobody gets hurt and everybody plays safe.
Down, stop. Okay, I should be able to see pretty good down in there. I'll lower it down. Once you go across the wall.
You're right at the tree line right there. Bring it down. About 20 more feet. Yeah, you're level. Perfect. Okay, 6 more inches down. Okay, 6 more inches up. All right, bring her up. Level, that's perfect, perfect. Perfect. Thanks, bud. Yeah.
With long lining, our main safety focus is visibility and communication. Just so the pilots are aware of where the individual is and all other people working around that guy, and in the landing, where our ground crew has high-vis gear and they're easily identified. Same with the hill guys have to be easy to spot, and their partners are easy to see and everything. Then the pilot knows he's good to start lifting the turn up, just so we don't have an accident with, if he doesn't know if the guy's clear, then he doesn't start flying away. We use not only radio communication, but we also use hand signals. We wave our hand over our head, and the pilot is looking down at us, and that's telling him to lower the hook. And then when you give a wave like this, he knows that the hook is ready for you. And then again, that's when you put the chokers in. And then you walk out of the way and get in the clear. You tell him on your radio that you're clear, and then he gives you the signal that he's going to start pulling on the turn. Good footwear, good sharp corks is another thing, so we have good footing in the bush and on the ground here in the landing. It's on the mountain and in the landing. Clothing has to be in good shape so it doesn't get caught on branches and stuff.
Landing size for me, since I work in the landing size is critical. Room to deck all the wood also, and just a good safe area for us to work in the corner. Put some cones out, establish a safety area for the pilots to see. Keep our heads up too. From where they touch down, usually a turn and a half away. It's a good distance and stuff. Like they're putting them down there, that's giving us roughly, I don't know, basically the turns. This landing, for example, they're landing down into the slash and landing the turn away from us, even though there's not an incredible distance here. It is a tight landing, but the turns are landing away from us. If something was to go wrong, either something come out of the turn or if the helicopter was to lose control, it would all be going that way and out of the way of us. I think it's the most important thing down here in terms of safety around the helicopter.
What do you like in a pilot?
Land the turns nice and smooth right in front of me, so I don't have to run too far over the bank.
Long line is the biggest help to seismic ever, just because, well, previously, before helicopters and long lines, this would all be dragouts. So all the seismic people would be basically muling this gear in. So long line enables us to cut down on manpower and essentially reduce the risks of basically all personal injury. So the only risk with the long line would be right here in staging, hooking up bags. But yeah, that's right, all our bags are pre-packed from the last job, and then we just load them up this high boy, just so we can get to our next job and be pretty much prepared to go. So all we gotta do is add in our special bags and then we're good. I would say the first thing you want to do is look up. You want to see which way his bird is facing. Wherever his 12 is, you want to be off to his 9 or his 3. So if you're off at his 3 o'clock, then he's got a visual of you no matter where you are, because that's where the pilot usually sits. So always watch. As soon as you hook him up to something, take a look up, see where his bird is facing, and then step away. And just let him have his path. And always have an escape route. You see it somewhat cleared out there, so I do have one escape route, and where else I can go up there and be safe. Well, we've just got the back gate down here, and basically as soon as I hook up the rack and I see which way he's facing, if he's facing that way, then I know I've got my buyout right through here.
And if he wants to turn due to wind, but you see, that's the nice thing. You got to feel where the wind is coming from too, right? Because the bird will always be facing the wind. So I know physically almost every time he'll be heading out that way right now. So, because these batteries are pretty heavy, I'll bring a truck over, load the batteries onto there, and then just put everything aside. Once it's up on the deck, then I'll come up here, move all my equipment up that I need out of my path, so I can exit. Yeah, I don't want to be caught with him with a full load. So.
Well, we need the long line to maneuver our gear through the bush. It's too much gear for the guys to pack throughout the bush, so we put it in bags and drop it at separate locations throughout our line. Well, you got to keep your eye on that bag runner at all times. Make sure there's no obstructions around your feet, so you're not tripping over the ropes and whatnot that we hook up to the bag runner. And make sure you're as quick and as safe as you can be to get that chopper on his way as soon as you can. I never really count seconds. I make sure it's done properly. The more you rush, there's more time for errors. Just be aware of the surroundings around you. You got to be on your toes. Make sure you know where that bag runner is, and have a little confidence in your pilot.
You must have a hard hat, obviously. The eye protection because of all the dust that gets kicked up. Earring protection because after a while you will go deaf. And we just, certain few unsaid rules I suppose, but most of it is protocol. But when he comes in, usually if I feel it's unsafe to grab it just because of weather, perhaps clouds and all the static that might come off the gravel pit, then I'll ask him to ground the bag runner. He'll just basically set it right on this bed right here, and then as soon as I grab it, it's pretty much gone. It's good to go. Have I had a shock? Yeah, I've had a shock. It's not too nice sometimes. How do we do it? That's the only really way is when he grounds that bag runner. Unless if you think you're good to grab it, you can grab it, but you better hold on. But it's never really a big issue, you know, because it's once every 1,000 times maybe you grab that bag runner. But for the most part, he'll ground it first.
It's called heli-portable seismic. So it's the exploration for oil and gas using explosive charges in order to read what's going on under the ground. The helicopter utilizes the long line to pick up the drilling equipment and place it where the drillers want their shots to be put in the ground, and we bring it to them. Using the external load window that we have, we fly the helicopter from the left side so that we can actually hang our body out of the bubble window that you see there. And we rest on our elbow and look straight down, and we can do vertical reference flying with the bubble window and place the loads basically where they want them. Just as far as the safety concern goes, often, you know, when the actual load is coming in or leaving the drop zone is when people pay the most amount of attention. If you're bringing a load in and place the load on the ground and release the load at that point, usually people think that the whatever hazard is going on is over. And often the empty hook is kind of more hazardous than people make it out to be. So it can float through the drop zone, it hit somebody in the head, or it can actually come up and snag a branch on the way up and rip the branch right off, which would then fall and hit somebody. Or even if there's multiple people in the drop zone and one person responsible for hooking the load, the other people aren't paying attention to what the empty hook is doing as it comes in, and it can swing around in the drop zone and hurt people.
Well, you have to have one guy on the radio for sure. That is a must. If things happen on the ground that the pilots can't see, and there has to be one guy on the radio with communication with the pilot to let him know what's going on. That 15, is really important. 10, sometimes things will happen and a rope will get jammed, or a bucket will get jammed, or lumber will get jammed.
Down.
And sometimes the odd person gets caught up, and you have to have a guy on the radio to make sure everything's free, so you give the signals for the helicopter to go, he can go. It comes natural. The load just comes down as soon as it's on the ground.
Okay, you're clear.
I'll be pulling the rope down. My partner's on the radio with communication with the pilot, and it works so well. The main thing I stressed before is the communication with the pilot. That's top priority.
It's a heli-portable drop zone here, and basically what you see here, there's a little bit of a slope on it here, and as the helicopter brings it in, we'll always kind of stay off to the side, from the side that the helicopter will bring it in. In this case, he'll be bringing it in from this direction over here, so we'll kind of stay off to the side here, and always uphill from where the drill is going to be in case there's a problem if it comes off the long line or whatnot. And yeah, just pretty much keep an eye on the load at all times, and you can't take for granted. He may have done it 1,000 times, but nothing can be taken for granted. And if you have the luxury of a larger tree, maybe putting your back to it if you can. At the same time, keeping in mind of giving yourself an escape route, just for if any deadfall, the wind blows anything down, or. And this is one of our biggest dangers. You know, that load. To number one, never walk under that load. When the helicopter's bringing it in. And, yeah, safety is the number one issue for sure. Everything else is secondary.
Myself, I've been underneath the machine when our crews are flying them, and to me it's like a war zone. It's typically loud, there's heavy equipment over top you all the time. It's a very, very dangerous environment, and people need to be vigilant about that environment. And repeat heavy lift, whether you're logging or seismic or any of those repeat heavy lift jobs, it's amazing the complacency that can happen with crews on the ground. It's very, we stress to both the flight crew and the ground crew, it's not a walk in the park out there. You're working in a very dangerous environment, and to stay on your toes at all times. Typical reaction to that environment is for people to rush, and we tell our flight crews to remind the ground crews on the radio that if they start to see a trend happening where guys are rushing, forgetting things, is to remind them we're here to play safe first and still continue the job, and to remind them to slow down and take the time to do it properly.
Yeah, we go through a line every day. We have to do a daily inspection on this assembly, just like the aircraft.
What do you check for?
Any sort of time that he snagged a tree or any sort of damage that's obvious. Could cause you problems. The line will get pulled on the inside. The line is just a Spectra weave. It'll pull it right apart. But you check through the shackle areas and all the mounting assemblies. You look at all the suspension points, make sure there's nothing cracked or obvious damage. This is the main suspension bolt. There's the eye of the Spectra comes through here. And if any of this is damaged, you swap it out with your other line and attend to this one. Same at this end. This is your main eye up at the top. You look for deformities and wear. Check out your electrical connections.
Yeah, another example of things that the ground crew should be really aware of is the force of the downwash. That they should be aware of debris. And when I say debris, I don't mean just little bits of dust and cardboard and stuff flying around. Downwash from a helicopter trying to lift close to 10,000 pounds, and it being about, it's up around 22,000 pounds, is like a hurricane. So if you can imagine what will blow around in a hurricane, that's what you can imagine, and what you should be prepared for when you're preparing the site, and make sure that that stuff is not coming at you.
Part of your operational briefing should be first aid and what you're going to do in the event of an accident or an injury. You need to know the location of all your first aid equipment on the site. Who is qualified to give first aid on the site? who you're going to contact in the event of an accident, what agency, what medical facility, and the location of the communications equipment you're going to use to contact that agency.
First thing we'll check is make sure they're not wet. If they're wet, we'll hang them up to dry before we put them away. Second, we'll check to make sure that there's no rips and tears in the webbing. Small tears we can repair. If a lot of the webs are ripped, we'll have to send it back to the manufacturer and he'll repair it for us. And we'll check all the connections where the hooks go on. This particular one can be unscrewed, but this one's tight. We'll look at all the other hooks, make sure the keepers are in good shape, and just sort of general condition.
Winter conditions, you're dealing with wind chill, first of all. Even on the bright sunny days, there's a wind chill out factor to consider. Slippery conditions, ice, snow, deep snow, especially at remote areas. Blowing snow when the helicopter is hovering around you, landing, taking off. All those conditions you have to deal with.
If you're doing long line in snow, it's static electricity. Nobody wants to hang on to a load when it's just a few feet off the ground and get zapped. And so there's more attention paid to grounding the load. Then once it's grounded, you can pick it up and slide it into position without any problem. I've seen a person knocked right off a load unconscious. They fell right off the top of a sling load to the ground, and it was the static charge that caused it.
There are additional winter hazards when doing long line work. Footing is key. Typically when you're working in snow and heavy equipment, it makes it that much more difficult to walk. So we ask the ground crews to either stamp out the drop zone. It's typically a 4 meter by 4 meter size area, which may potentially eliminate trips and falls. Also, typically you're working minus 10, minus 20, sometimes up to minus 30. That rotor wash can make it feel like it's minus 40 or minus 50. So we ask the crews to watch each other for frostbite, because quite often when you're working, you're not realizing that you're getting frostbite. Vigilance and training, can't go wrong with either.
We've covered a lot of the specific points, so rather than belabor those, the only thing I can do is reinforce to stay very aware. And I hate to overuse that word, but complacency is a terrible thing, particularly with crews who are veterans or who have been on the job for a long time on any given day. That it's worked fine for the past 50 pickups. There's no reason why it should be any different for the 51st. Well, every time you start a new pickup operation, all the hazards that were there with number 1 are there with number 51. And that's the reason why you have to stay aware all the time.
The biggest risk for the ground crew is to lose your situational awareness, because it's windy under there, it's loud, there's pressure to get the job done. Usually the risk comes from doing things too quickly, and the member may slip and fall or hurt themselves or cut themselves or get hit with the load because they don't know the load's coming. They turn their backs to the load. It's very important that you keep your eyes on the load or on the empty hook at all times when you're a ground crew member.